Well, welcome. My name is Beth Rochefort. I'm the Associate Director of Educational Technology at Northeastern University Online Experiential Learning Group, the longest title ever. And this is Justin Horvath. He's an instructional designer for the Northeastern University Online Experiential Learning Group. And we wanted to talk to you guys today about our approach to analytics. So how many of you, do any of you have any analytics tools or packages that you're currently using? All right, you got something. Lucky you. How many of you heard things like this said in meetings? You know, oh, the LMS is down, that tool's impossible. Oh, students can't do that on mobile, we don't want to use that, those trainings are no good or ineffective. Nobody's using that. These are really slanderous and dangerous misconceptions. And how do you protect your group or your team from these kinds of misconceptions? Generally, we all know, we've heard these kinds of things before. People talk about something and then it sort of spreads through the faculty or your students or whatever. And it's usually a small vocal minority that presents these kinds of ideas, right? It's never the people that are so happy with your services. It's always the people that have had some problem and they just pass the word along, and it's not necessarily true. So we wanted to talk about how can you defend yourself against these kinds of misconceptions. Well, we do it with data, so welcome to Do-It-Yourself Analytics. We proactively publish a website that refutes these claims and shows our contributions to the university and the different services that we provide. We don't do it with any kind of special software, unfortunately. We would love to have a high-priced analytics package or, you know, a specialist to help us with these things. But we really feel that if you can't measure it, how can you manage it and make effective decisions in your group about your educational technology tools, about what your team is doing, about anything. So this is a process that we've gone through using existing practical solutions and reports and things that we have in order to make data-driven decisions about what we're doing. So a little data about us. In our group, we are a fast-growing group. We have 28 people in the department. Some of these statistics relate to the College of Professional Studies. We're a service group, Northeastern University Online Learning, Experiential Learning. Sorry, it's a new name. And so we serve all the colleges at the university, but the best statistics we have, or most statistics we have, are related to the College of Professional Studies. So we have over 1,500 certified instructors. We certify instructors before they can teach online or hybrid courses. We have over 4,000 course sections a year just with looking at the College of Professional Studies alone on our LMS, but we do serve, as I said, the other colleges as well. Over 9,000 students. We have graduate centers in 3 states, which of course means in the world of online it doesn't really matter that we have them in 3 states. We have students all over the world and all over the country. And we have partners in various countries that we're working with to do special programs. So what kind of things, data sources, do we look at internally in order to produce this report to protect ourselves and show that, no, the LMS is not always down? We have various internal systems. We have Salesforce reports, things that we use for course readiness and course quality that are regular reports that we run and send out to the academic programs. We have time tracking software that we use roughly within our group just to vaguely know what people are working on so we can see, you know, where our resources are spending the most of their time, our people resources. We have regular and ad hoc reports that get requested from our technical services group for system queries. Once again, manual, but that we can do. We have vendor reports that we've been looking at for years, you know, things from our Tier 1 technical support. And this may inform our decisions about training for faculty or student resources that we provide. Kaltura Media Server, that way we can look at the analytics and see who's using what and what are the biggest, most viewed videos. And then we have Google Analytics installed on our Blackboard instance. We also have it installed in our NU Online Instructor Resource Center website. It's a WordPress site. We're going to show that to you. And we also have it installed on our screencast server, relay service, so we can track the usage of those types of things. So Justin's going to show you how we did all this, and we pulled all this stuff together, because we had all of these things in-house and we're looking at them, but we really needed to pull it together in one place. So I'm going to pass this over to him to talk about how we create the report, and then we're going to go right into it and show it to you, so that way you can see what we're talking about. Take it away.
So yeah, this is our last slide. After this, I'm actually going to be taking you, we're going to go on to this publicly facing website that shows all of our data.
Which, by the way,
yeah,
you can go to this URL.
There's that tiny URL at the bottom. It's will be a little bit easier to type in. You'll be seeing it as I manipulate it here on the screen, but if you want to go there, it's fairly mobile friendly, so you can do that right on your phones. But the important thing to remember about what I'm about to show you is this report isn't really our data strategy. This is the byproduct of what Beth was all just talking about, right? We're looking at all this data all the time to make decisions about what we're doing, but we also thought that we needed a way to kind of put forward to show to the university, outside partners, all the things we do, and kind of crow a little bit about that we actually have a data strategy and how all the good things that we do. So I'm actually going to go there now. So this is the website right here. It's a bunch of graphs, and these are all interactive. And how we do this is just a WordPress site, and all of these graphs get created manually, mostly by me. I have a couple of the instructional designers, a couple other members of the team that help me keep this up to date, because a lot of these graphs some of them are updated monthly, many of them. A lot of them are also updated like biannually, like stuff that relates to quarters, and then also we have a few that are just updated once a year. And so we just aggregate this data, put it into a CSV, and then we upload it here using a WordPress plugin called Visualizer. I like it. There's lots of them out there that do very similar things. The thing I liked about it was fairly responsive, and it also has these nice little rollovers, so if you formatted the data correctly, you can see this all the time. So, one of the biggest reasons we wanted to do this was really the misconception that Blackboard always is down. People would hear this all the time, and the reality is Blackboard is almost never down. We're hosted by Blackboard, so we built this little graph here, and it's 100% all the time. These big troughs, this one big trough, this is our once a year upgrade, which was down for half a day, publicized ahead of time, and then a couple other little blips here where it's down. It was up 98% of the time that day. But even with, especially this big blip right here, and oftentimes, because this is an 18-month graph, you'll have two of these. One of the things we first learned about a lot of these graphs is context is super important, right? So seeing two giant dips in here probably wasn't sending the message that we wanted. So we have a little chart here below it saying exactly not just when and for what, but for what reason, basically. So we have a lot of planned major updates here for that big 13-hour block, right? And so, we also have some other data lying around, like the total number of registered students. It's kind of interesting. A lot of people don't know, even within our own university, how big our online programs are. So it's kind of nice to just remember how many people we actually serve. So this next one, and for this one, we just keep records of this. Every time Blackboard goes down, we keep a record of it and keep it up there. So every time I'm going to show you a new data graph, I'm going to explain kind of why we put it here, what it helps us do, and then how we gain that data. So that was kind of interesting, I guess. I mean, it was 100% almost the whole time. So this is a little bit more interesting to us. This is our Blackboard visits per day. Now you can put Google Analytics on just about any of your front-facing websites out there, including your Blackboard instance. This is really interesting piece of this is that if you just kind of look at it, you can see this is Christmas. It gets really big at the beginning of term and drops off slightly as we go down. But when you look at it really closely, so you can see there's a weekly pattern here. The trough every week is on Saturday, and then the first peak is always on Sunday, and then there's a little trough again, and then Wednesday is the next peak, and then again it drops off until we go down to Saturday. And this is kind of interesting, like, why is this? Well, we, in our trainings to faculty, we recommend, they don't have to do this, but we recommend that they have their initial posts for their discussion boards due on Wednesday. A lot of people do this, right? You probably have a similar recommendation. Have them post their initial post by Wednesday and then their response posts by Sunday. And it turns out, apparently, based on this, that's what a lot of people are doing.
So we know they're listening to us a little bit.
A little bit, at least. At least they're taking that recommendation. So then, Blackboard Analytics tells us all kinds of other fun things. There's lots of other rich data sources within Google Analytics. We're going to talk more about it when we get to our this website. It's also running on the website you're seeing here. But it tells us, like, the total number of times people logged in. It's not technically login, it's their visits. Some amount of people hit the website. It's 4 million times, so it's kind of interesting. But this is the one that really makes us think about how people are interacting with our website. When people come to Blackboard, they're on average clicking around, looking at 17 different pages. Now, if you think about how Blackboard, or your learning management system, you don't get to the content right away, right? There's a bunch of clicks you have to do to get to where you're going. 17 clicks actually isn't a lot if you think about it. So this means that people are not coming to Blackboard and clicking around, getting lots of content in one session. On average, they're doing one or two things and then they're out. It's kind of interesting. Next, it'll tell you what your average browsers are. So we have a couple little slivers right up here. If you see, this is Safari on Android and Safari on iOS and the Android browser. And the fact that even this number, it says, it's 0.5% of our users are using their iOS device, which is still pretty shocking considering Blackboard's mobile experience is not very good. We have the Blackboard mobile app as well, which we're going to talk about in a second. So that's possibly they're still getting some value out of that, or maybe they don't know any better. Maybe they don't know that the Blackboard mobile app is out there. And actually, this was bigger. The first time we published this, both of these were larger, and we started publicizing our mobile app a little bit more. And last fall, and we got both our mobile stats got bigger and these got smaller, so that was good. And then the other thing that's interesting is Chrome is killing it, right? We used to recommend Firefox as the best browser, but this has been shrinking precipitously over the last year, and so we can no longer just rest on our laurels and say, well, just use Firefox and that's the best one. People aren't using Firefox, so we have to, we obviously always test in all browsers, but we have to be doubly sure that it works in Chrome, because it's really where all of our users are. So Blackboard Mobile, Blackboard has a mobile app. They give you analytics. Again, this is just a vendor report. It's actually a website that they publish all the time. And the analytics, when you look at it, it's fine. You get a little graph that's similar to this that shows you like the daily users and everything. But the problem with it is they won't let you download it. There's no easy access to it. And when we built this the first time, people really wanted this same graph for our mobile apps. People ask me all the time, can we get the same graph? Can we put it on there? And the whole strategy behind this website is that this is easy data that's easy for us to get and easy for us to put here. This isn't our data strategy on this website. This is ways that we can help explain what we do in an easy fashion. So one of the things we can say, and Blackboard Mobile, these statistics are really important to have up here because mobile is still pretty controversial, right? For two reasons. One, a lot of people think that the Blackboard mobile app is terrible, and I'm not going to defend it. It's not the best, but it's also pretty usable, right? We have about 9,000 students a year, and over 3,000 of them are using the mobile app regularly. And this is really interesting. Of the 3,000 users, almost 3,000 of them went on March 29th and to check the mobile app. And coincidentally, March 29th is very, very close to the end of term. And the one thing that the mobile app is very good at is it's showing you your grades. The other thing that the second most used time people went on to the mobile app was Super Bowl Sunday. The other thing that the mobile app is really good at is checking the discussion board and updating the discussion board. And again, that Sunday need to post by maybe comes in handy. And then we have, iOS versus Android. It's kind of interesting, right? So now we get to one of my favorite graphs on this whole website. So at Northeastern Online Experiential Learning, our group, we support a lot of different models for building online courses. The majority of those courses is still a very faculty-powered model where we train faculty and they build almost the entire course almost completely on their own with like kind of training, support, 24/7 access to us, but they do most of the work. And we have other models where they're extremely instructional designer driven, where instructional designers build almost the entire course for them, but that's still looking at the percentage of our whole course, a smaller piece, very small, not very small, smaller piece of the pie, right? The problem there is then, how do we know what's going on in those courses? I'm not building it. We go through and we check it all the time, and we're looking at for quality counts and other readiness checks and things like that. But really, we needed a way to find out how people were delivering content in those courses. So this is what we did. Blackboard is it's basically a big SQL database, right? So you can run queries on it. If you have it hosted by them, they'll even help you do it. They have queries that they can that they've used, and then you can modify. And I'm speaking at the edge of my understanding of this. This is all done by our very fabulous technical services team. But then, so what we did is we just basically had it query the database and see what number of classes are using different things. And we did this the previous summer. We're hoping to do it again this summer. We're planning on doing it again this summer. But so we saw things like text materials. Almost 100% of our classes are using text materials. And this, by the way, includes blended and learning, blended and online only. Yeah. So, but we did this, we looked at this data the first time we went through it, and we got different amounts. And we saw down here rubrics, right? And it was only around 15%. And basically the tools were going through and looking at just if there was a Blackboard rubric being used in the course. It wasn't counting what we'd like to call paper rubrics, right? A Word document that has a rubric put in the course or turn it in rubrics. The metrics weren't counting that either. And we push rubrics all the time, and we thought rubrics were definitely higher than this. 15%, no way. It's not right. And then video, same thing. We were having very low percentage of people using video. It was, again, around less than 20%. And we thought that was lower too. We thought it was going to be a little bit higher based on, our anecdotal evidence of what we thought was going on in our courses. So what we did was we just created a survey in Qualtrics, and we had all of our instructional designers go in and look at a statistically significant number of courses to see, and they counted if they saw a video in the course or if they saw the use of Blackboard assignments, whatever. They clicked it off, and it was completely analogous to exactly what we checked with the queries. But the takeaway here is that rubrics, the one that we thought, we were sure there was a lot more people using rubrics in the course. Last summer, there were not. It was stayed around 15%. And video, which we thought was going to be a little bit more, ended up only being around 60% we thought it was going to be a little bit more, maybe 25, 35, because at that time, video still wasn't that easy for us to have in the courses. We had we had screencasts, which was okay, but we're going to talk about our different media strategies in a second. But now it's up to about 60%. So anecdotally, what we thought in the back of our minds was not true in either of these two cases. We were using a lot more video, and we had a lot less rubrics than we thought. And so that's one of the reasons our data strategy to generate this data was so important. And then we went and shared it with people, and I don't have, right, there's the idea like maybe we would have 2 bars next to each one of these, one that was the manual survey, one that was the SQL, query survey, and seeing which was which. That was confusing for people.
And I think the point of the, sorry to jump in.
Go ahead.
The point of our individual audit was to verify the results of the Blackboard, the query we ran on Blackboard. Because obviously, a query in Blackboard can only check tools that it identifies of tools. So it can identify a link with YouTube in it, but it can't identify, or screencast, if it says screencast.com, which were the 2 main sources of video, but it can't necessarily identify, or anything from the video mashup kind of editor, but it can't necessarily identify if you just put a link to some video that, like on WGBH or something like that. It's not going to be able to track that. So what we found by doing the audit, it was fairly representative, although it did actually show that we had a little bit more video than we thought, than the query showed, not than our expectation. We thought people were using video. The other thing that will be interesting to see this year is when we do it is VoiceThread. Since we now have the building block for VoiceThread instead of more manual process, it'll be in the updates in VoiceThread. I expect that to go up this year.
I hope so.
But I think basically this gives everybody a rough idea of what our instructors are using in their courses. It also shows us Turnitin usage, which we knew it was a lot of people liked it, but it was a little more popular than we realized, which was important when we had things like the Turnitin outage that hit everybody, like, what was it, a month ago?
And then again, 4 months ago, yeah.
Right. So then we really know how big a problem this is when this happens, if this goes down, especially if it's like 2 days before grades are due, to our faculty. And that way we can, respond appropriately.
So do they have the option of using Safe Assign and Turnitin?
No, just Turnitin or a regular electronic assignment. We try and remind people that Turnitin is a little less stable than, but it can be a really great teaching tool or whatever. So, we try and make people aware of the upside and downside of using Turnitin.
Yeah.
But anyway, I want to make sure, we got another question back there, but.
Go ahead. We got time.
You're getting at some of the building blocks that make a good online course. Are these built into faculty evaluations?
That's a kind of two-pronged question, because while we do provide information to the academic programs related to the design and delivery of the courses and what people are using within the facilitation, we don't evaluate the faculty from a, faculty evaluation standpoint. That's the academic program. So,
Why wouldn't you be involved?
Well, like I said, we create information and we report out to the programs, and they can use that information. However, we don't make the decision. We don't hire them, and we also cannot fire them, unfortunately. No. Basically, a lot of our things that we do, we have done to provide information to the people making decisions about this. But we are,
Do you get the sense that the information is used to make student learning better, or it just goes out there?
Absolutely. So I'm going to get to more of the data that you're talking about in a second. So a lot of we generate reports that are based on individual courses. We do readiness at the beginning of term, and then we also have another thing called quality counts. And I'm going to talk about this. Let's just go. Let's skip ahead. It's right here. And we'll go back and touch on those other things, but this is actually the other really interesting thing that you're already asking about, so let's just skip to it. So the first thing we do at the beginning of all of our terms is we check, and every single course that we deliver that's either online or blended, and we see that it's quote-unquote ready. And this basically just means that the faculty has gone in and prepared the course, and there's enough material in the first 2 weeks of the course for the students to be able to interact with. And now, this is it's fairly cursory, because we, again, have, like me personally, on that day, I have 150 to 200 courses that I have to check. And it's really about delivery. It's not about content. And this is, we also give a talk about how we support our whole online programs, and I'm not going to go into that, but we do reporting and we check on delivery, and our mandate is making sure that faculty are good at delivering the content. If it's academically sound, that's the academic program's purview. So each one of these, this means what was ready on the start of term this past summer's start. And again, almost 98.5% were ready on the start of term, and those 1.5% of people got an email or a phone call from us, and we worked with them like immediately to make sure that they were ready to go. So, but this graph isn't that interesting, right? So yes, most of our courses are ready for students at start of term. That's it's a little embarrassing that it's not 100% to tell you the truth, but we all understand the realities there. So then this next graph is really the thing that I want to get to that might talk to what you're thinking of. We have the second check that is not run on every single course. It's called Quality Counts. And it's based on the Quality Matters rubric, and we go through and do a really deep dive into the course, analyzing the syllabus, the facilitators' interactions in the course, how they're presenting their assignments, their directions, their learning objectives, everything. It's a really substantive look at the course, and it's about 10% of every course, of all the courses every semester. And this graph is really interesting. It's a little hard to read, and actually, I was going to talk about this at the end, but yeah, the interesting thing about this is we've struggled on how to make this graph more readable to someone who doesn't understand the whole process, or even people that understand the process. But what this is saying is we do 3 checks for readiness. We have 2 weeks ahead of time, Thursday, and then right at the start of term. Now, the blue one is if you got a really good grade at these different marks, and then all the way down to this green one is if you scored empty. So it's empty, you have a lot of work to do, red, you did pretty well, and blue, you did great at that check. What this proves here is that if you're ready by 2 weeks ahead of time, your quality of your course, the quality of your delivery is much better. And then if by final readiness, you're still getting checked, if you get a great grade 2 weeks ahead of time, we don't check you again. If you're still getting graded at final readiness, even if you got a gold star on the start of term, your still overall quality of your delivery is not as good. And we have data to prove that. So that's why we can defend our policies of 2 weeks ahead of time, you need to have 2 weeks of your course ready to go, and that will ensure that you have a better quality course. So this is a really important graph for us. We've struggled on exactly how to deliver it, and I'm jumping around. So does that answer your questions about that a little bit?
Well, just remember that this report is reporting out on things that we can provide information on, and what our group does. So these are reports that we've been running for years and delivering to the academic programs, but it's not about, or I should say, this presentation is about how we deliver information and what information we can provide to the programs on a regular basis, as opposed to faculty evaluation, which would be a whole nother presentation. I don't know if you want to show some of the other, I know we have, looks like 12 minutes left.
Okay. Yeah.
So, but this is one of the big reports that we do generally.
Yeah. So and this is because I promised I would tell you how we did all this stuff. This is running on Salesforce. Salesforce basically runs our check system, so it keeps track of this, and it has a really rich set of reporting apparatus. Is there anything I need to go back over?
Well, I think video.
Yeah, so we have our streaming video services. We, about a year ago, launched a second media service. We always had screencast.com, which is done by TechSmith and Camtasia. And it's a really good service. The recording was good, but it had a lot of problems as far as like ease of use, administration, and difficult, and it also wasn't available to students. So we now have Kaltura, and this is when we launched Kaltura widely. This was our pilot here, and then in September, you can see this was the number of screencast videos that were being used last September, and already we had a fairly large pilot over the summer. We were already doing a lot of evangelization, if that's a word, of the tool. You can see it already started off pretty strong. And then here we have, again, this by January, the screencast, the older tool, has dropped off quite considerably, and then we have the new Kaltura is almost as high there.
Part of the reason behind this, sorry to jump
ahead.
in, is that probably in about October, after Kaltura was up and running, prior to that, we still had anybody who was using Camtasia Relay and still wanted to continue to use it was still going to screencast.com. But about October of that year, we shifted it to go to the Kaltura media server, since we knew everything was working correctly. I think it was September, October.
Yeah.
So then, basically they could still use Camtasia Relay if they liked, or they could use the Kaltura screencast, screen capture tool. And then it would just be in Blackboard in their My Media area, regardless of what tool they use. However, we do have a lot of faculty that reuse resources. So we still have the screencast.com. So the next thing will be trying to get everybody to shift off of that eventually.
Yeah, and
so
so
those are probably reused.
yeah, these are older videos that have been, they're no longer producing these videos, but they're still on here. And there's a thought that we can ditch screencast in the near future, but the reality is there's still a lot of
We need a transition plan that I'm working on.
yeah. And actually, we've talked about this a lot. And so how we get these two pieces of data, Kaltura has a really rich reporting service. It works very similar to Google Analytics, and then screencast.com allows you to put Google Analytics right on there, so you can get that same really rich data source. And then they're compiled as CSVs into this graph. And we also can see what our most popular videos last year were. But I'm going to skip ahead a little bit. So yeah, another thing we have is our this website, our Instructor Resource Center. We can also run Google Analytics on that, and you can see at the start of terms, people use the Resource Center. That feels good to us. But then this is what's really important. What pages are people using on the Resource Center? So you can see the how-to on the Kaltura page is number 5. Not surprisingly, the home page is number 1 by a lot. But also on Google Analytics, which we don't show here, is you can actually see not just what the top page is, but how people are getting there to those pages. And that's interesting because we send out a lot of links in our emails and publications around the university, all different. We send a lot of links to faculty, try and get them to know about our services. So we can see, are people clicking on the home page and then navigating to where they want? You can see that through Google Analytics, or are they going directly to the page? Pretty interesting, and a lot of it is they're linking directly to the pages from outside of Blackboard. So then we also have here our 24/7 support center. We use Blackboard Student Services, thank you. This is kind of interesting, like how many times people are calling in the month, and the different colors are how they're interacting with Blackboard Student Services. We thought chat was going to start getting bigger and bigger, but it just hasn't. People still like to call and talk to people. But that's kind of cool. But this one is the one that really helps us drive decisions. And this is actually a simplified version of what is the call types coming into the student services, what people are having problems with. This is just both faculty and students when they call, what are their problems about, right? So this is a big problem, this unspecified. This means that the person that picked up the phone didn't enter in what the question was, so we have to talk to them about that. But then the other, there's a huge portion that don't fit into any of these buckets, so I just put it into there, right? But then also, we can see Turnitin is a pretty big piece of this pie, and then also tests and surveys. And we can look at this and figure out, well, how can we address these proactively? Because we don't want, every one of these is a problem that someone's having on our services that we don't want to be happening. So, and we can look at the actual reports and see probably what's happening here is test surveys and pools. These are probably problems, not with the student not being able to know how to use the tool, but actually a training problem. The faculty is not building the test correctly. So that informs our trainings. And then also Turnitin, we feel like by looking at the reports that Turnitin is probably based on people not being able to navigate to where their feedback is. If you've ever tried it as a student, it's a little circuitous. So then this is will inform our student orientation, which is coming up. We're redoing that very soon, and we just went through
And the student tutorials.
and the student, well, yeah, student tutorials, student orientation, yeah. Then we train a lot of faculty. This is a graph about our different faculty members. This was when we transitioned from Blackboard 8 to Learn. It was a big spike in our training, and then how we train all going along, lots of faculty. We have surveys that run at the end of the training. We ask, it's a Qualtrics survey. It's a great tool. It gives you lots of rich, you can cross-reference this. And what's kind of interesting here is these two graphs. It's confidence of faculty using different tools that are experienced doing online, self-identified as experienced or not experienced. I have more to say about that, but we're running out of time. So.
Well, I think that is also, the thing that's great about some of these questions, as well as some of the support tickets, is this is what really informs how we evolve the instructor certification
Yeah, that's what I
training.
was gonna say.
And some of the things that they've done recently is they've built in simulations to help practice before they actually go and do it. And then part of the certification training is actually building your course, copying your course, that kind of thing. So some of these things allow them to make decisions about getting people more confident using some of these tools or outreach related to video or whatever. The Grade Center, it's always a favorite.
Yes. And then lastly, before I take any questions, so this is our how we spend our time as instructional designers. All the instructional designers use this tool.
And technical services and,
Yeah.
yeah.
The
I mean-
technical service isn't on this graph,
Oh,
though.
okay, sorry, this is just instruction.
This is instructional designers. But yeah, well, it's called Toggle. It's pretty cheap. You can get it for $5 per user per month. And basically, you can, whenever I'm doing something, I enter what I'm doing into this little thing, and it times me, and then when I change to do a different task, I tell it I'm doing something else. So this is really interesting. It tells us, like, we're directly helping faculty, talking directly to them, and this is actually broken down in our reports by email, by phone, or in person, but we don't break it down for people here on the website. Just wanted it to be easier to understand. It's about 22% of our time. We're working on these special projects, things that don't fall into our normal categories, about 28% of the time. This is a really helpful way for us to see, are we setting the right priorities? Are we spending the time doing the things that we want to be doing? And this is interesting too, because when I first did this report, Toggle was a free-for-all. People could create their own projects, their own tasks, and just track it as they saw fit. And that worked okay if we were just trying to see what people were doing in a very vague way and let people, but it's worked out a lot better that we've actually taken that ability away from them and actually structured all the projects within Toggle based on our priorities, and with a lot of input from all the instructional designers to say, well, they say, like, this is confusing, or I need a way to track this, and we always find a way to track all of their time, but we put it into these buckets so we can understand what they're doing, right? We don't want 100 of these little slivers doing
Other.
basically the
Missed.
same task. Yeah. Well, other is things
Yeah, I know.
that we're
Too
actually tracking correctly, like they're actually tracking fine, but it's
Yeah.
just so
Minute.
that, and we want it to add up to 100%, so we got to put other in there, right? So then that's the last
Yep. And so-
the last thing on the report. So the last thing is, like, the key takeaways is, like, you have this data lying around, right? You have databases, you have vendor reports, you can put Google Analytics on anything. It's totally free. Toggle's cheap. And once you have your arms around this data, once you're actually thinking about it, you can then start publishing it like this if that's something that you think will be valuable, for you.
So since
Yeah.
we've got 1 minute left.
Oh,
Is there
really?
any questions? Maybe
But-
any questions?
Can you tell a little bit about how Salesforce fits into it?
Yeah, well, Salesforce is mostly used by the academic programs. They use it for a lot of different things. But we leverage, I mean, you know, like the faculty, the reporting to the advisors goes through an app that's in Blackboard.
The readiness and the QC that
But
I talked
for
about.
what we do, the readiness and the quality reports, we generate that information, save that information in Salesforce, because then it's very easy for the program managers who are working with these faculty to access it. We generate reports and we send them out regularly, and the instructor and the program are usually included on these reports or these records that go out, but it's basically keeping that information with the course record for them. So it was a tool that we had been using a variety of other things to do this over time. For readiness and quality, we used Google Docs, we've used FileMaker Pro, but at a certain point we said, look, we need to have a magic database, you guys need to push it together. So we worked with CPS IT, the College of Professional Studies IT department, to have an integration with Salesforce to be able to use that as our data repository for that type of reporting.
Right, and then that gets generated as, it gets spit out of them there as a CSV, and then I put it on here.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Hi. Do you have any data on like learning objects that students are actually using? So say when they go into VoiceThread or they go into using those.
That technology tool does sort of talk about how many people are using it. Usage of VoiceThreads, that was from that was a very bad analytical tool. I basically went into VoiceThread and counted how many instructors were using it, but because we didn't have as high usage at that time. But this report gets at some of the things, but it's not necessarily student usage. And really, right now, the only way we can kind of get at that is the course reports, which are very manual. So that's why, you know, we would like to have a better tool to get a better handle on that. But you could do it on an individual basis with course reports if you have statistics tracking on and stuff like that.
And some of the vendor reports, like Kaltura, has some great individual reporting on, like you can get down to individual classes, you can aggregate it by a student, but no, we don't have a good analytics package, which is really the next step for this, and we have been pushing very hard for that, and
yeah, so hopefully.
You know, we'll see.
Did you have a question?
In
Or
terms of a comprehensive analytics package, are there particular solutions you're looking at?
Yeah, all the usual ones, like.
yeah, I mean,
talk about
we've looked at them previously, but it's now we're getting to a point in the institution where our desire for this kind of thing is matching with the other people that have to support the purchase, right? You know, the academic programs and other groups. So, you know, we've looked at Blackboard Analytics in the past. We've looked at Civitas as more predictive analytics. You know, that's a much broader type tool. There's certainly things you can get from things like Starfish Retention or whatever. That's more on the you know, student retention side. But
another interesting tool that would take this up, wouldn't take it to the level of as Tableau, is like, not to Civitas or Blackboard Analytics that we've talked about using, but we're hoping to just leapfrog over this solution. But there's this thing called Tableau, which actually the person before us talked about.
He mentioned,
it's a much better visualization tool, and it would actually turn these graphs into being live graphs for a lot of them. They can pull in things from Google Analytics or Salesforce databases, lots of places, or run queries on your Blackboard instance. It's called Tableau. It's really seems pretty exciting, and actually I learned about it here last year.
Yeah. So I
but
mean,
we don't know. We may do that next.
we're trying
I'm
to
hoping
get
to get it.
yeah. I mean, it's on our list of things, but it's ideally it'd be a groundswell where we could get a larger adoption of a bigger tool that might require a little less. Like I said, all these things are very manual.
Yeah.
And so
That's why we
after an
called it do it
implementation
yourself.
with another tool, yes, it would still be manual, but there'll be a lot more dashboards and things that are easy. Because part of the problem with any of these reports like that we send to the programs is they have to go and get it. We send it to them, they have to go and get it, and then they have to, the easier it is for everybody to look at the data, then it's easier for them to use it. But,
Oh.
What's been the feedback that you've received on the
So I'm just getting the signal that we're over time. So anybody who has any other questions, just come on up, and we'll be happy to talk to them over here.